So we are going to switch to one of our industry panels right now, and I wanted to welcome our guests first of all. I've had my introduction, so why don't we just quickly go through and give you guys 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourself and talk a bit about your role at your firms.
Great.
Evangelos. Yeah.
I'm Evangelos. I work for SwissRe in the SwissRe Institute. And the Institute is a place where we look more into the future. So what might happen in the future, especially for my business model development. And my topic is on ecosystems. So all the buzzwords are included in myself.
Alex.
Good morning. My name is Alex Bojer, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Anivo. Anivo is an insurtech here in Switzerland, where we have the technology and the operations to build and distribute new insurance products through affinity groups. For instance, we are active in the employee benefit section for large corporates, and we are active in the Bancassurance section, where we distribute insurance products together with cantonal banks here in Switzerland.
Thanks, Alex. Gero, I guess you've given a bit of an intro, but you want to just summarize? Yeah.
I probably do not surprise you when I say that I look into artificial intelligence for Zurich Insurance. So I'm heading our group function since 2015, seeing how we can use AI to apply it to core insurance processes like claims and underwriting.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen. The title of our panel is essentially about how insurtech opens up insurance companies and pushes them into being much more like tech companies. And I don't have a background in insurance myself. And when I first started to hear this idea, it was a little bit new to me. And I thought maybe we could spend a minute. And Evangelos, could you say a few words about what exactly that entails? How is insurtech changing insurance fundamentally from the perspective of a top-down firm like SwissRe that's exposed to quite a lot of the industry?
Actually, if you're looking into our products itself, I mean, we have a very, let's say, financially modeled and engineered product, no matter whether it's insurance or financial services. So the core itself is very a structured approach how to do that. And it's quite obvious that the tech aspect on the structured information and the structured modeling is just key. So it's just a matter of time until, and you showed it very, very perfect today, so we can fix some parts of it, the insurance value chain, ongoing with using AI or all other kind of technologies. So what's going to be interesting is how does this evolve over time until a majority of our value chain can be more or less modified or replaced by technology itself. So it will be parts of tech, but it will also be a part of still the domain knowledge we have, and domain is still financial service modeling and insurance modeling as a product itself. But it will go beyond. So a majority of them will be tech. We have to get there. We did some early stages and some early work, but this is just the beginning to my mind.
Alex, you actually have also a background in consulting in the industry, so you've seen quite a lot of different angles. Based on your experience, what are the, say, 2 or 3 technologies that you think are having the biggest impact across insurance right now? Or could you name 2 or 3 that you think are having a big impact? AI obviously being one of them. Are there 2 or 3 others that you think are important to keep in mind?
I think that's the usual things that everybody in this room might know. So it's AI for sure. I think everybody is looking very interested into blockchain and what's going on there in terms of smart contracts and contract automation stuff. But it's also even the more basic stuff. I mean, in Switzerland, if you look at insurance and how data is shared amongst the different players on the market, I mean, it's still Stone Age that we are in here. So I think if we don't look into all the new stuff, but if we look also in the API area a little bit, how to exchange data in the health insurance area between the payers and the providers more efficiently, or between brokers and insurance companies, or between insurance and reinsurance companies, I think that would already be a huge first step.
Gero, AI is definitely your theme, but is there any other technology that you think is having an equally important aspect, or are there technologies that are impacting what you're doing with AI that are particularly important?
So in terms of technology, I would probably mention also IoT data, because obviously IoT data, when the health insurance could be the Fitbit, the phone, which tells you how fit you are literally and what you can do to improve your health. And then you have smart homes, where you can actually to make ensure that claims don't even happen. But I think the key angle to look at all of these things is actually to not start with the technology, but look very much on which are the new data pools that are emerging.
Right.
Because, for instance, for the use case I showed, it was the whole idea to automate research was because the amount of external data is increasing so strongly. And the whole thing around IoT was, again, that you had actually, for the first time, the ability to monitor something like water pressure and actually send this information to a central place to be analyzed.
Yep. I kind of notice a trend. I mean, whether it's APIs, blockchain, AI, as you say, it's very much about connecting data. How do you access pools of data? What can you automate with those pools? I hear it a lot that, especially in the banking industry, legacy systems are a roadblock and something that really prevents us from doing that. And I'm just thinking, just IoT alone, AI, the wealth, the huge exponential increase in data that's being harnessed now. Are insurance firms able to actually implement this, or are there fundamental roadblocks like legacy infrastructure that are going to be non-starters in some ways? Is it the same in the insurance industry as what I'm familiar with wealth management?
My short answer would be yes, it is. It's a massive problem that I think all banks and insurance companies currently try to address. And I think whoever addresses it best is probably also best positioned in the market to benefit from all these new tech trends and new technologies.
Yep. Evangelos, maybe you can give us some examples. You, I imagine, get to see quite a spectrum of different technologies being implemented. Are there any use cases that you're especially proud of at SwissRe that you've championed, whether it's B3I participation or something else in IoT, perhaps?
Okay, so I don't want to talk about B3I because it's a separate initiative, so we're part of this consortium, and it's more a reinsurance insurance game, so that's something different. But what we do a lot is we try to use contract data and to extract with different algorithms the changes per year, so what has been changed, and all the notes being taken on a manual level, so we really try to benefit from extracting or updating contractual data, but also understanding what's the kind of risk which might change in the future for doing that. So, which is key for us actually, because we're an insurance company. There are some other cases like we try to, as another example, we have a customer where we took the wearable data and we tried to connect them with the claims data in addition. So if you can understand the customer behavior over time, and you can more or less predict what will be the future claims out of it, so the modeling aspect of them, that would be very, very interesting to see. And this is an area what you just mentioned, is if we get much more information from IoT connectors, and we can model that and also do that in a predictive way, this will be going to be completely changing the game, because so far we are looking into history data, but now if we can do that on real time, in addition, that would be great. That would change a lot in the game, I would say.
We've talked about the breadth of technology. Something that I've noticed, certainly in my career, is also the new ways of engaging. I mean, we're talking here very much today about how startups, corporates, and investors work together. Can you give us some examples of how your firms are interacting, whether it's from startup to corporate or corporate to startup? What are some of the successful and perhaps not so successful ways for these types of collaborations or innovations to be explored?
So I think the key question is, so how does the business, from a business strategy perspective, it looks into that? For the time being, we are focusing more on internal use cases, right? Either we work with our partners or our customers together, and we need the insurtech or FinTech environment to just solve very particular use case. It's more or less like Gero just showed this before. When it comes to business transformation, and that's more or less the next episode, I would say, from a business perspective, this will be a completely game changer, because you will need the core technologies in order to think about how you can transform the business going forward. And that's a kind of different game. So you don't use internal resources or FinTechs or insurtechs for solving the very dedicated use cases, you have to think from a business perspective and try to find solutions how they can help you getting there. And this is just a different focus area. So we are not there yet. I think this will just start.
Yep.
We are in early stage, but what's going to be important is how do we look that the business might change in the future and how to get prepared, especially from a business model perspective. If this is not clear, how can you get started? If the vision is not clear how this might end up for your business model and how do you have to transform, can you start the kind of tech side around that? So I think for fixing business use cases, that's the perfect way how to do that. But if you change the whole transformation from a business perspective, you have to think in a different way. And that's always kind of difficult. So the buzzword there is ambidexterity. And this is always, because you don't have KPIs for the future in the majority of cases. So that's the problem.
Alex, maybe I'll come back to you. Gero, do you see a similar type of approach from Zurich Insurance? I mean, I imagine you have some corporate venture capital activity. You're probably working with some maybe incubators or accelerators. What are some of the tools that you would use from your organization in collaborating with external parties?
Let me maybe start to say we've basically defined a couple of ecosystems, one for motor, one for life, and one for home, where we, as you rightly said, collaborate with accelerators, both here in Europe, but also in Israel and the US, to find good ideas that would actually help us to enhance the overall value of the ecosystem. But I think what we did learn, and I think that's very similar to your experience, is that there's first of all a lot of internal work that we need to do to get some value out of it, and that the best startup partners are probably the bit more mature ones. So typically the 3 or 2 guys who have written lots of Python code, it will be for them quite hard to immediately get in and solve a problem for us. Typically the startups we work with are around only for a couple of years.
Okay. Alex, you've navigated this world from a different side, and I think also advised quite a few companies on how they're going to source these technologies. What do you see that works? What do you see that's popular or becoming more popular? Do you have any thoughts on these collaborations?
I think looking at the insurance companies, technology and process-wise, they are very close jobs, right? So even less than banks, they are not very used to work with partners, neither on the technology side, so that they have outsourced certain parts of the technology or processes. I think they are very, very close. And when we started end of 2014, I think it was very, very difficult to get into action with insurance, and even more different with health insurer and reinsurance companies here in Switzerland. And I think this has changed. I think insurance companies are much more opening up to collaborations with younger companies. I agree with you what you said. Maybe it's not the best idea as a 1 or 2 man startup to talk to insurance companies and think that you will get the deal done within a couple of weeks. That's not going to happen. But they have definitely opened up. What we see at the moment, what I see at the moment in Switzerland, is that many insurance companies focus on the distribution angle. How can I tackle the market? How can I get how can I get more customers? This is also what you see on the M&A side here in Switzerland. And I think gradually, and this is also very interesting for us to see, we are also now talking about lots of product innovation. How can we build, distribute, innovate, rebuild insurance products much faster than in the past? We see new concepts coming into Switzerland which are not very popular here, like the MGA concept, which is very popular in the UK. So that a external company can get authority to create products, price products, process claims on behalf of the insurance or reinsurance company. I think that's very interesting to see. And for sure, as we have seen over there as well, in certain pieces of technology, where insurance companies opening up, work together with young startup companies or startup slash early stage mature companies to collaborate on the technology side. So I think it's a very interesting time to be in, and I'm looking forward for what's going to happen next.
Maybe to pick on you as a talented young professional, I mean, you had a great career in the industry, lots of options available to you. To talk about maybe the personal or the talent side of things, why did you decide to become an insurtech entrepreneur in Switzerland?
So I've been in consulting quite a long time. So I was making PowerPoint slides and Excel for about 12 years. And since I think I can do that, I think for me it was time to do something else. And of course, there was always the option to go to one of the large insurance reinsurers here in Zurich and around. But it's always, you can always go back. So that was the idea. But I definitely never will. So if you have once made the experience of building up your own company with all the goods and the bad things, and it's always a roller coaster, still is after 3.5 years. It's an amazing journey.
Yeah. So obviously, I think there's a lot of people, myself included. I've left a bank job in the recent years. There's many who participate in these sorts of community who are thinking about which side of the fence they want to be on. But I think also we heard a number of times today from you, Gero, in particular, but also from Mark at NVIDIA, the way that technology is changing the demands for talent is a big issue now for firms. Is that something, for example, Evangelos, that you're having to deal with? How do we get the right talent in to work with technologies, to manage these collaborations, to overcome these types of challenges? Or is it a matter more of retraining people and upskilling them? How does SwissRe deal with that sort of a question?
First of all, we have a very dedicated business unit called data science, more or less. We are about 120 people there, but they're served all over the world, so in 3 regions. However, what we see now recently is that a lot of business units now want to create their own teams because they have dedicated use cases. So it's kind of balanced between a centralized or regionalized teams and very dedicated business analysts or data scientists into very dedicated areas. And I think this is a kind of tendency we'll see. On the talent side, I mean, to be honest, we don't have that many, data science all over the world. It's going to be a huge gap in the capabilities. And it's not only the data science part, it's about, how to put the technology or the insights into the business in order to get this operationalized. That's the kind of second aspect. It's not about having only the tech guys and the data guys, but how do you bring this into real-time processes? And this is a kind of transformation aspect on that. And that has a lot to do with cultural changes and also how to do business perhaps quite differently in the future. So I would say we will be urged to change the mindsets because so far we're looking more or less in the back history, how we did it, and to do it now in a more real-time environment, this is, it's going to be changing a lot, and the capability developments will be the key issue there for sure.
Maybe just to add, I actually don't see on our side any kind of gap in terms of or difficulties in getting data scientists. I think there we have actually quite a good pipeline. I think the biggest issue that we see is to get, for lack of a better word, like the business translators. So people who actually understand the data science side, but actually also have a deep knowledge of the insurance side. Because this translation effort, that's actually where you have most of the struggle. You don't struggle so much in building the models.
Yep.
So anybody who has an innovation around this one, that would be amazing.
How does that spread further? Is it something that people are going to have to just have as a skill now? They'll have to understand data science more? Is it something that your firm is it a transition project? Is it something that you're educating people about? Is there anything actually being done on that, or is it something that is expected to work itself out?
That's a very good question. I think what we do at Zurich so far is that we have certain trainings open for the employees. Mm-hmm. And I think especially the younger generation jump on this, they like this, but how you actually transform the whole organization to be open for that and to also learn about this, that's, for me, honestly speaking, an open challenge.
How would you rate the level of urgency that you feel around some of these topics? I mean, when we read the paper, and especially in the last 3 or so years that FinTech has been steadily rising up the curve, it can almost create a bit of a panic that firms don't have what it takes. There's disruption all around them. Do you think that's actually the case? Is there an accelerated pace of change that's really challenging the way that established businesses work? Or is this something that we've seen before and that it's more of a steady hand on the wheel? What do you think, Evangelos?
I think this is more a personal view. I think 2 years ago, we all thought, oh, this is going to change everything fundamentally very quickly, so we're going to be eroded, in a couple of years from now. Unfortunately, and I think this is a little bit lacking, especially here in Switzerland, we don't really fear, nobody is attacking each other. So we're very nice to each other. We have not a disruptor getting in and say, by the way, we're going to get with new products, with a new kind of distribution model. So this is not happening. So this means the dividend yields in the insurance companies are very high in Switzerland, and it looks like there's no fantasy. And this is what struggles me a little bit more. In the US, you have, Amazon is getting in. This is not happening in Switzerland or in Europe. In China, you have the tech players, tech giants, especially from an insurtech environment. So you have Ping An, Zhong'an doing that. Southeast Asia is very digital. We don't realize it. So the Europe seems to be a little bit stuck behind. That's my personal perspective, especially here in Switzerland, where everybody is very nice to each other. And, we have not seen any fundamental impact from our client side. So I have not seen prices going down, or I get a kind of different service. From a personal perspective, I have not seen any changes in the way insurance or financial services are interacting with myself. And this is for me a kind of signal that there's a room for potential still, and there's a long way to go. So everybody's just, too relaxed for the time being.
Maybe to pick up on that, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, maybe this is a transition into an opportunity also for some questions from the audience. You talked about some of the unique attributes of the Swiss market. Do you think you could each share a few points of the unique characteristics of the Swiss insurance market that foreign firms might not be familiar with, or that make it a bit unique here? Very competitive, but also very stable.
I can only introduce a kind of couple of concepts we've seen in other places, like Root. Root is a US-based telematics car insurance provider. Just an example. So you need to download the app, you need to drive within 2 or 3 weeks, and then either you're accepted, and if you're accepted, the price is going down until 52%. Not 10%, not 20%, 52%. So this means that the behavioral patterns is directly reflected into your pricing scheme. And you need to kind of get the engagement right of the consumer in order to get this right. Did we see telematics here in Switzerland? Perhaps we are not the users. We did see some products, but they were not successful. So the question is why? Another example are all these vitality schemes on getting from South Africa and the UK, where you have a engagement platform doing this directly with the consumer, and you can clearly see that if you do this right, you can decrease the costs in the future. There's a direct correlation between people participating in the engagement program and managing risk better for the future. Have we seen this kind of discussions? No, we had Hezana app going to the market and then now being judged by everybody. This is not the right way of doing it. I think we have a huge potential doing the business much, much better, but we are a little lacking behind the innovation turf, I would say so. This is why we're focusing more on internal processes. That's the natural behavior. So we have not seen any new products getting in the market and really trying to disrupt it. We have not seen that. Nobody. So this is why everybody's nice and dividend yields stay long, because we don't have attackers.
Yeah, Alex, I think you've experienced things as, you're an Austrian actually, right? You're a foreigner, but a familiar foreigner, let's say, and you've also lived here in Switzerland for a while. Were there some things that you even had to adjust in the way that you were building your business when it came to raising funds or developing clients along the way because of the unique attributes of Switzerland, or it's a market like any other?
I think Swiss is a very small market, and that's for the good and for the bad as well. So in terms of the bad side, it's a very small market. So, and it's very expensive to build a company here. And the people are very expensive, and the run costs are very expensive. So if I think about starting a startup which should go global very swiftly, I would ask myself, why should I do it in Switzerland? Rather than for some regulatory reasons which might the colleagues in Crypto Valley appreciate. But other than that, I personally would not start a global FinTech startup in Switzerland.
I tend to agree. Do you think there's any sort of a characteristic of what types of firms can do business here well, though? I mean, maybe not start here, but what types of firms would have success?
Sure. I mean, we have the whole biotech cluster in the area of Basel and in Aargau. We have lots of blockchain and crypto stuff in Zug. So I think these things are doing very well because of the closeness to the large pharmaceutical companies or the regulatory environment that the blockchain colleagues are in. So I think this works. I think for insurance, for us, it works because it's a small market, which also is good. So if you know like 8 C-levels from 8 different insurance companies and 2 reinsurance companies and 4 health insurance companies, then you know everybody in Switzerland. So this can be also be good and bad. So if you don't mess it up, then the guys are still fun, still nice to you, and they give you some opportunities. And so I like it. For us, it works. For us, it works. And as you already said, there are no attackers in Switzerland, right? It's a small market, so why should Amazon or Google come to Switzerland while going to Indonesia or India or China and so on? It's a very profitable market, even though that the insurers always complain that they don't make lots of margins on their product. I think it's a super profitable market. But you have to understand that the people, that the likelihood to switch your insurance policy just for a couple of Swiss francs, it's not there, right? So why is telematics not working? For a couple of Swiss francs, nobody plugs a box in his car. And for the big bucks, why should any of the big insurance companies introduce a box which gets their margin down by 50%? So they don't do it.
Gero, I don't know if you wanted to add any points on that theme, did you?
I think in general I agree with the assessments of my 2 colleagues here. I think it's just really important to keep in mind the Swiss market is very much based on personal relationships, and I think that's why it's also quite hard to disrupt from the outside just by having a digital app. Overall, I'm a bit more optimistic because while I agree that probably what has been put into production in the last 2 years is not an awful lot, if I look at the pipeline, when you speak to colleagues of all the things that are currently being built or being developed or being tested, I would assume an uptake. If it will be an exponential uptake, that's another question.
I want to ask a few kind of detailed questions, or at least some questions that might help our guests from abroad get their head around what opportunity exists here in Switzerland. When it comes to budget for innovation, or specifically for AI in your case, Gero, where do you see the consensus going in the future? Are we at peak insurtech yet, or do we see more budget being spent on developing these innovations, working with external firms, investing in startups? Is there more to come, or is this what we're going to see?
There's definitely more to come, but I think the sophistication of choosing a partner and setting it up has also changed over the last years. I mentioned earlier multiple vendor prototyping, so I think getting a foot in the door is probably now easier. We give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but actually then also like winning the contest and winning the contract overall, I think actually got significantly harder because there are quite a few players around. And also because I think we see a lot of shift from like a time as material contract to really pay for performance. So we measure much more aggressively and make sure that either both parties win and lose, which again has pros and cons for both.
Yep. Alex, the firms you're talking with, are they spending more to work with startups and invest in innovation?
Oh yeah, yeah. So if you compare it 2-3 years back, definitely. So you have lots of these acceleration programs like the F10, for instance, which is very prominent here in Switzerland. You have lots of cooperations with venture capital companies like Balloas with Antemis or Helvetia with B2V and so on and so forth. So I think there is definitely much more going on. Also, like Zurich is launching their global InsurTech event competition, right? So there is definitely much more going on than in the past. Yep.
Yep. Evangelos, you're
Yes.
spending more?
I think this has changed over a couple of 2-3 years, and it will change even more. The question is, when do you consolidate? So there was I think a Kellogg's professor in the US stating that the innovation budget should be spent about 50% for the current year. For the next 18 months or to 2 years is going to be about the 25%, and the other 25 should be spent on the mid to long term, so 3 to 8 years, something like that. Unfortunately, the reality is far away from that, right? So the reality in IT spendings and innovation spending is more or less focusing on fixing the core rather than designing the future, and will be my bet. And this will change over time, I'm sure, because the acceleration will increase, for sure.
We've only got a couple more minutes left, so please do raise your hand if you'd like to get a question in, because we're going to go to break right away afterwards. I had one last question. If you had any technology roadblocks or if you had an innovation wish list, if you could bump into a company here today that could solve a problem for you, would you be able to mention one or two that you think would really be impactful on your business? Or what type of companies are you looking for at the moment?
I think technology has just getting commoditized. So I think this is not a technology problem we don't have. It's more how do we look into the business and how to get it right from a change perspective. So I think we don't have a technology or data problem. We have more or less a business perspective problem and how to get this right. So I would love to have some more urgency and people pushing more, and also that more aggressiveness in the market. This will help us a lot in the industry, because this is not getting from ourselves as well. We have to do it, yes, but if it's enough, I doubt. We should do more.
Interesting. So you're looking for a little bit of disruption in the room.
I would hope so. To be honest, I mean, if disruption is getting in, then we will have to act fastly, and that's just a different mindset. So far, I mean, nobody, not even in the a little bit in financial services, where you have now the zero fees fintechs getting in, and Revolut, and so those are the kinds trying to disrupt, but they have to get the momentum and get the market share, and that's more or less very difficult for them. So the question: why doesn't it happen in our business? No, why don't we have internal Revoluts or internal tropes or whatever within our own business? Why don't we have it? Because we are unable to do that? No. We are able to do that. We are here for so many years, but the way we think and the way we interact and we change the business is not changing. And that's more of the problem.
Maybe Gero first, and then we'll come back to you again, Alex. Any thoughts on what you guys could use at the moment or what you're looking for actively?
I would actually say we do still have data problems, so I think any startup would help, for instance, to ensure that algorithms can learn from smaller data sets. That would be a huge gain for us. Again, we don't have big data everywhere. And in general, probably we're really looking for solutions, which now I know sounds kind of obvious, but it's the thing. If you develop something, don't just try to develop an algorithm. Really think about the whole workflow, the targeting of the customers. The more it's packaged, so the easier it makes it for us to immediately get some benefit out of that. The easier, obviously, the whole conversations go. I think very often we're getting approached from a lot of people far too early.
Okay, thank you. Alex, maybe last words for you. It's a bit of a twist. Maybe whether it's innovation that you could use in your business or opportunities for innovation to fill some gaps around what it is that you're solving in Bancassurance. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. The Bancassurance piece is definitely something that we are looking at the moment very closely. We are live since April this year with the first cantonal bank. We are seeing hit ratios of up to 40%, which is astonishing. We know that this technology that we are using to build new products, reiterate products, get into banks via video chat, it works. It works for the customers. So I think this is something we are very much looking into. And what are we doing there? So we are pushing the whole product development further. Thinking about setting up a company as a product factory next to Anivo, which is the distribution factory basically. And then I think this is something that we are focusing on. So more and more create own products, which are closer to the customer, reiterating the product faster than the reinsurance company can do. So this is our focus at the moment. As a small startup, we are only 25 people, so we need to focus. Don't have the bandwidth to do AI, blockchain, IoT, API whatsoever. So product development, this is our one.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Any last questions from the audience before we head to the break? Okay. Well, I know everybody's thirsty and interested to start interacting. Thank you to our panelists. Great start to the morning. We've got refreshments out there. We'll be back in half an hour at 25 after 11, and more exciting stuff for you there. Thanks very much, everyone.